Hello everyone, welcome back. A few weeks ago we did a video looking at 5 levels of the Fender Stratocaster, mostly guitars that you can't get new anymore. We had a lot of fun shooting out these different guitars, and what would be the next logical step but to check out the Fender Telecaster. So that's what we're gonna do today. So there's a ton of different YouTubers that will do videos shooting out lots of the newer stuff, the stuff that you can go buy on Sweetwater or Guitar Center or whatever big box store. But those videos don't take a look at a lot of the older guitars that you can go buy used. And I know for a lot of us, we're looking at used guitars just as much as new, if not more. So that's kind of what we wanted to do here, was take a look at guitars from specifically the last 30 years for these videos, shoot some different models out at some different price points and let you know our thoughts. I do want to note, I do like the videos that we see from the other YouTubers that are of the more modern stuff. That's cool, but we just want to try something a little different here. I will say, shameless plug, we are a shop that sells used and vintage, so this is more our world. So if you want to check out any of the guitars you see in this video, or just check out our entire inventory, you can see it at aflashfulofgear.com, or click the QR code, or you can even go to affog.com if aflashfulofgear.com is too much to type in. So we'll see you there. So with all that being said, let's check out these 5 guitars. Let's see how they sound. Let's see who each of these is for. And in this video, I'm even gonna try to pick a favorite, not like the objective best one, but just my personal favorite out of these 5, which I think is gonna be tough. So let's get into it. The first one we're gonna check out here is the Fender Classic Series 50s Telecaster, and it is made in Mexico. This line has always been Fender's entry level into their reissue type of guitars, but it says Fender on it. So this is obviously higher end than something like a Squier, and this is also going to be higher end than something like your Player Series Telecaster, or back in the day when these are around, the Standard Series Telecaster, also made in Mexico. These are pretty true to vintage appointments, especially when compared with lines like their classic Player line. This actually does have the right 7.25 radius, smaller frets, and yeah, just kind of the right vibe overall. The modern equivalent of this would be their Ventera series, or the Ventera 2 series. I know they keep on making them. Price point wise, these are gonna float right around $800 used. I've seen some for a little more, I've seen some for a little less, but right around 800 is what you'll usually see like a Classic Series 50s Tele go for used. Stepping up from there, we are getting into Fender Japan with this Fender 71 reissue Telecaster, the TL71. And this very cool old candy apple red. This guitar is reissuing obviously a later year than the 50s, so a little bit different specs, a little bit slimmer neck on this one. Got the cool 70s headstock, so we love that. F-style tuners on the back. This is still, of course, a vintage style guitar, but it does have some a little bit closer to modern appointments, though it does still retain a 7.25 radius and smaller frets. But the neck profile is kind of getting a little closer to modern territory. Not there just yet though. This specific example is from 2006 and is part of the Crafted in Japan line. In the mid 90s, all of the Made in Japan stuff started saying Crafted in Japan instead of Made in Japan. It's just kind of a change in the way that they worded things. These are going to go for a bit more than the Mexican reissue guitars. I usually see these starting around 1100, and depending on the color, they can kind of go from there. Right in the middle of all of these, we have the American Standard Telecaster. This is actually my personal Tele, as we don't have an American Standard at the shop right now, so had to grab this from the personal collection. This particular example is from 2015, and it has factory custom shop pickups, which is pretty cool, and an ash body. So that's pretty rad. This is the most modern of all the guitars we're going to be looking at today. This one does have a 9.5 radius, as well as the more modern medium jumbo frets. This is just your straight ahead workhorse Tele, right down the middle. Price-wise, these are going to be pretty similar to the Japan reissues we just talked about, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on the example. I'm gonna say these are usually around 1300, so we'll tend to run just a touch more than your Japanese reissue. Moving back to Fender Japan, we have the newest guitar on this list, which is a Fender Heritage 50s Telecaster. These are made in Japan exclusively for the Japanese market, and these have actually a nitro lacquer finish. At least the top coat of the finish is nitro lacquer, and otherwise very accurate vintage appointments. Once again, 7.25 radius, smaller vintage frets, pretty thick neck on this one, pretty accurate to a 50s Tele. This one is a reissue of the same type of guitar the Mexican one is reissuing, but this one's going to have a lot higher end parts on it, as well as, of course, that nitro lacquer finish. Because of all that, this is just pretty objectively a lot higher end instrument than the Mexico reissue, and the price reflects that. These go for about double of what you'll see the Mexican ones going for. Heritage are actually pretty hard to find. They don't pop up for sale all that often, as they're not made in very high production numbers. But you'll kind of see them anywhere from 1,600 to 2,000, kind of a bit more than an American Standard, but a little bit less than an American Vintage, and quite a bit more than most things in the Fender Mexico line. So yeah, this is kind of Fender Japan's highest end reissue that they're currently making. Concluding with our most expensive guitar on the list here, we have the Fender American Vintage Telecaster. This one is a 52 reissue from 2003. And this once again is a reissue of a early 50s Tele, obviously specifically 1952 here. Again, going for a similar thing as that first Mexico one we looked at and the last Fender Japan Heritage guitar. Once again, nitro lacquer finish, at least on the top coat. Most modern-ish Fenders are going to still have some sort of poly base coat with nitro on top of that, but these still will wear really well and will look like a vintage instrument after some time. This will share the same radius and fret size as the last 50s reissues we looked at. This is kind of Fender's current highest spec version. Right now they're doing the American Vintage 2 line. This is from the original American Vintage line. They've done lots of different variations of that, but this is an older one coming in at over 20 years old here. A little different than the modern American Vintage 2s. Price-wise, these usually go for a little over $2,000. I'll see these anywhere from like $2,200 to $2,500. So once again, a little more expensive than your Fender Japan Heritage and twice as much as that Japanese reissue we looked at first, the 71 reissue. This is definitely the most pricey of all the guitars on this list. So now that we know what we're looking at, we're gonna plug all these in, we're gonna play them all, I'm gonna give you guys a quick playing demo, and then I'm also gonna spend some time off camera with each one of these and kind of get my thoughts together and see what these all sound and play like. Let's get into it. You're hearing these Teles through a Fender 65 Deluxe Reverb. I have a Boss Blues driver right in front of that, just adding a little bit of boost, a little bit of saturation, but nothing too crazy. We have it mic'd up with a Shure SM57 and Sennheiser E609, just about 8 inches off of the speaker. And then we have some Rode NT5s as the room mics. All right, now that we've spent some time with each one of these and you guys have seen how they sound, let's talk about each one and talk about who each of these is for. Back to where we started, this is the Mexican reissue, the Classic Series 50s Tele. And I'll say, this is a very solid Telecaster. This will definitely get you far, and it is a good recreation of that classic 50s Telecaster. I will say it's not perfect. This being a poly finish does lead to stuff like this right here, where it doesn't really wear, it just chips up, which is not ideal. That's just kind of something that you're gonna get with a poly finish guitar. The high majority of Telecasters nowadays are going to be poly finished, so that's not exclusive to this model. Overall, this is pretty comfy. I would say of all five, this one probably fought me the most, I would say. This probably has the least comfortable neck, though it is still pretty solid. I'm definitely not hating on any part of this, but this one is probably the outlier, I would say, as the others were a little closer together. A distant fifth for me, even though I'm not really ranking these. This one was, I hate to say it's probably my least favorite, but it was still a solid Tele. I do like this a lot better than like your Mexico Standard Tele or your Player Series Tele. Definitely a solid value for the money. I mean, for the price point it goes for, not bad. I probably would push up from this though in most situations and get into something like one of the Japan reissues. So who is this one for? I'd say if you're eyeing this, like I just said, I'd probably try to push up to like one of the Fender Japan reissues if you can, especially something like the TL71 we're about to look at. That's not that much more and I think is a lot better guitar. But if you're kind of in a situation where you were looking at a Player Series or a Standard Tele and you're going up to this, I do think that this is worth the extra money from there. And I understand that sometimes, as much as we always want to keep pushing up, it's not always possible. So if around 800 is your entire budget, you can't go beyond that. This is still a very solid Tele, and this will, like I said, this will get you very far. So if you're out gigging, you need a good straight ahead Tele to just do everything you need to within a specific budget. I think this is still a solid option, and I wouldn't hesitate to check it out, especially over something like a Squier or one of the Player Series Teles. I think this is very valid. Now getting into our Japan reissue, our 71 reissue Telecaster. This is the second most cost effective, but this is really, really solid. I really like the neck profile on this one. It's very inviting. Probably because I've just been kind of playing it up against everything else, but because this is a reissue of a 70s, not a 50s, this does have a bit slimmer neck, but it still kind of has that vintage style with the rounder 7.25 radius. To me, this is a really nice kind of meeting in the middle between something like the American Standard, which we're about to look at, and something like a 50s reissue Telecaster. This once again does have a poly finish, which is really the only thing that I could knock here. The pickups sound great on this. It's definitely a little darker, a little more direct in the mid-range, I guess, is kind of what I heard myself. But this is a very solid Tele. I think this is a very worthwhile upgrade from the Mexico line. This is not gonna hold you back at all. If you're somebody who's looking for a guitar to gig with, that's not crazy expensive, that will stay in tune, that will sound great, that will be reliable, all the things that we all look for, this is a great place to go, as I think this will do the Tele thing, do it very well, and I think at a very reasonable price point for what it is. I would probably trust this more so on the road than the Mexican one. Once you get to the point where you're touring, stuff's getting thrown in a trailer, you know, reliability really comes into play. And not to say that the Mexican one wouldn't be reliable, but I think I feel a little better taking something like this out. I think this will do you well for years to come. Probably deal very well with the trials and tribulations of being on the road. Moving on to my Tele, the American Standard from 2015. I feel biased saying anything positive of this one, but I do absolutely love this guitar, and I in general really like the American Standard line. Whether you're looking at an older American Standard or the newer American Professional stuff, they're all super solid. There's a reason that they are the flagship. There's a reason they are the standard that Fender makes, as they kind of do everything. They do everything pretty well. This obviously is not vintage correct. It has 22 frets and the 9.5 radius, also a little bit slimmer neck. They're not too slim on this particular example. This one's an ash body and it's quite light, which I really, really like. Yeah, the pickups I really, really like on this. I think it's from 2012, 2013 to around 2016 on these American Standards, where you will get custom shop pickups from the factory, which I think is a really, really great feature. This to me was definitely the most hi-fi sounding guitar, probably the most clear of all of them. Pretty high output while still retaining a lot of clarity. If you're in a studio environment and you're not so much after vintage correct, you just want a straight ahead Tele. I know I've said that phrase a lot, but this is a really solid option, whether you're looking at one in this year range with these pickups or just a regular American Standard or even American Professional with the pickups that those models have. All of those series are super solid, and this will be a great studio workhorse. These are also great for a gigging and touring environment, but I did also recommend the last one for that. But I will give one thing for these when you bring these on the road that is really great, is all these parts are really easy to find at like any store. So if you need to replace a tuner or something like that, it should be pretty easy to source the parts for something like this. There's a reason this is kind of right in the middle. It's like the neutral good. These are, they do the thing. They do the Tele thing, and there's a reason so many people like this line, myself included. I should note, when looking at this list, somewhere around between, when you get into the TL71, that first Japan reissue, going from that to this, quality-wise is not like a huge jump. You definitely start seeing the law of diminishing return there. The TL71 is solid. There's nothing you couldn't do with that Tele. So, well, I do actually probably like this a little bit better. The quality's gonna be pretty on par as we go forward, and it's gonna be more so what specs are you looking for, and what guitar really meets like your specific taste. All these are solid. So getting into the Fender Japan Heritage series here, I really, really like this one. I tend to prefer a little bit slimmer necks, and this one does have a pretty thick neck on it, but man, this is really comfortable. Like, as somebody who likes slimmer necks, this is a thick neck that I actually really get along with. And as far as the three different like 50 style Teles, this has my favorite neck of all of them. This is really, really great. This one sounds good too. It's not super high output, but I think this sounds a little bit clearer than the classic 50s. The American Standard is maybe a little bit more articulate than this, but both are really solid. They're just different. I wouldn't say one is better than the other sound-wise. Obviously, you just heard the demos. You make your own decision with your own ears. This does feel like a nice upgrade over the TL71. Just the fit and finish of this one is going to be a bit better, but like I just said, law of diminishing return definitely comes in. TL71 is solid. This is solid too. The nitro lacquer finish is definitely a cool feature here, and I think warrants the extra money that you would spend on something like this. But if you don't care about that, the TL71 is probably gonna do everything you need to. Once again, if you are touring and gigging, but you don't want a poly finish, you want the nitro, as it's gonna wear over time with you, this is a pretty good place to land. And coming in at less than the American Vintage, it's tough to choose between the two, as I would say quality-wise, as far as, you know, quality of construction and that sort of thing in parts. This is right there with the American Vintage, and we'll kind of get into that once we get to that guitar, but this is really great. I will say one thing is it's a little bit harder to find parts for these. The Japan reissue stuff does use slightly different components sometimes, so finding the one-for-one replacement here in the States is sometimes not super easy. I will say you can usually find a quality replacement part that fits. It just might not be the same as was originally on it from the factory. What you'll find in the American market is going to be a little different. Usually the pure vintage parts will fit these as well though. But I wouldn't say that's a knock towards the guitar. It's kind of the logistics of owning one of these, and if you're going to bring it on the road and tour it and all that stuff. So just keep that in mind. On to our last Tele here, the most expensive of these Teles, the American Vintage. I know in lots of other videos, I always say I really, really like the American Vintage line, whether you're looking at the old ones as far back as the 80s or the modern American Vintage 2. I always have really liked what Fender offers from this series. I love this series because you're getting an American-made guitar with the proper finish and everything. They come with a really nice hard case. It is everything you'd want out of a vintage style Fender, with no real compromises here. One of Fender's best values, not because it's an inexpensive guitar, but because it's at an attainable price point and it is truly a professional level instrument that is true to the vintage ones, and it does not carry a price point like one of the vintage ones would. So I really love the American Vintage series, and this one is certainly no exception. Like I said, kind of comparing all 5 of these Teles in this video, for whatever reason, I like the neck a little bit better on the Japan Heritage, but I like the pickups and the sound of this one a lot better, and I would say this one may have played just a touch better. I can't tell you why. This one just felt really agreeable to me. It felt really at home for me. I felt this was the best recreation of the 50s Tele of all the guitars we looked at in this video. It is worth noting the Japan Heritage was really, really close, like crazy close, especially given that there's still a pretty significant price jump from one to the other. If money is no object, this probably is my favorite one. I just love how this sounds. Yes, these pickups had a little bit more like maybe compression than like the American Standard did, but there was just something about this that it was hot and it just sounded really, really great. If I was looking for a vintage style Tele for a studio environment, I wanted something that's going to last a lifetime, which I will note most of these will last a lifetime. If you're looking to really splurge on like one great Tele for your studio, I would get something like this. I think you just can't go wrong with this. This is a very recognizable Telecaster. It sounds fantastic. It's got the right kind of finish and everything, and just, this is it. If you want a vintage style Tele, this is the one. Both of these are really, really great. These are obviously the last 2 we looked at. It's really hard to choose between the 2. Personally going with the American Vintage for my personal taste, but I know a lot of people will probably prefer the Japanese one. They're both valid options. There's not a huge difference here. It's more of like just personal preference. If for whatever reason, I was leaning towards this one just a little bit. So like I said earlier, I'm gonna try to pick my one favorite, and you can probably tell from how I'm discussing these. I'm gonna have to go with the American Vintage. This is just a great Tele. This is a Tele that's gonna last a lifetime. While I would say any Telecaster in this video is a valid option, and they're all really great, and I'm grateful to even get to play all this stuff because it's cool. For my taste, just by the littlest bit, I'm choosing the American Vintage 52 Tele. This is everything I would look for out of a Telecaster. Well, it's definitely the most expensive. I think this is still at an attainable price point, and what's not to love? As far as like bang for your buck goes, this is honestly the one. For my taste at least, your mileage may vary. So that's gonna conclude this. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out today and check out all these Teles with us. I had a lot of fun getting to play everything. We did a video that was like 40 minutes long looking at all kinds of different Telecaster models from the last 40 years or so. I think we checked out like 50 different Tele models. So if you're into that, click this video here, and it's kind of a brief overview of like every different model they made, and you may enjoy it. If you enjoyed this video, let us know down below in the comments if you want to see more like this. There's so many different Tele models, again, as we discussed in that other video, so maybe we'll do another one of these looking at 5 different levels of Telecaster. We'd love to check out more. Do you have a favorite between all the ones in these videos? We want to know down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys liked, whether it was aesthetics, whether it was specs, whether it was sound. Let me know what your preferences are down in the comments. Also, if you play Teles, if you have a Tele, let us know what you have, and we always love reading your stories. We appreciate you guys being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we will see you in another video soon. Bye.